We have someone I watched play many years in the NFL. He played his college ball at Washington. He ended up going to Canada for a few years, being a great player up there, and then joined the Houston Oilers. He was a nine-time Pro Bowl selection, Pro Football Hall of Famer Warren Moon. How you doing, Warren?
I am doing great, David. How are you today?
Great. I know from talking to you before that you went to junior college before you ended up going to Washington. Was that by choice?
Not really. Everywhere I wanted to be recruited in major colleges didn't want to recruit me as a quarterback. They wanted me to change positions, the wide receiver or defensive back, or schools that ran the option and that recruited me as a quarterback. But I was a passer, and I wanted to go to a school that threw the football. So I decided to go to junior college just because I didn't get the type of offers that I wanted to get coming out of high school, and went there for a year, got myself a little bit more exposure, had another really good season, and finally started to get recruited as a quarterback.
How did the colleges react when you said, I want to play quarterback? And they said, no, we want to shift you, and you come back and you say, but I want to play quarterback.
Well, I had actually committed to Arizona State at the time under Frank Cush, and then all of a sudden they signed the two top high school quarterbacks in the nation that year, a guy by the name of Dennis Sproul and another guy by the name of Bruce Hardy. And once they signed those two kids, they told me they were going to change my position. So I decommitted from Arizona State, and looking at my other options, I decided to go to junior college. And it was mainly because I believed in myself as a quarterback, and I believed that I could throw the football with anybody, and it was just a matter of somebody giving me that opportunity. And since I didn't get the right opportunity coming out of high school, I took junior college as a route because my high school coach was going to the junior college as the offensive coordinator, so I followed him, and we just continued what we had done in high school.
When you went to Washington, did John James tell you you're going to play quarterback and that's it? That's the way it's going to be?
Oh, no question about it. I would have never even considered Washington or any other school if I wasn't going to play quarterback, and if I wasn't going to be given the opportunity to play. It was a matter of just going where you thought the best chance you had to play was, and that's what I looked at. You know, SC was a team that I had grown up admiring, watching all their players throughout those years. But Vince Evans was the quarterback at the time, and he was going into his senior year, and I would have had to redshirt if I went there. And I had already went to junior college for a year, so I didn't want to waste another year redshirting. So I decided to go where I had a really better opportunity to start in my first year. So I went to the University of Washington.
And the transition to Washington, an easy one for you?
It really wasn't. It was easy in some ways as far as playing football, but we weren't very good. And Don James had just come in. I was part of his first recruiting class. The team was 2-9 the year before we got there, and we knew it was going to be a rebuilding process. So whenever you go through that, and we had a very tough schedule that year as well, we didn't get off to the greatest of starts, and so I got a lot of criticism for that, being the starting quarterback and being 18 years old and being in a new city for the first time and being the first African American to ever start at the University of Washington. So it was some very tough times for me early in my career, but things turned out very well once we got the type of talent that we needed, and we all grew together.
Yeah, your running back wasn't that good there. You had a 6'5" running back who ended up playing for the Bears.
Yeah, Robin Earl. He was a really big running back, 6'5", 45 pounds, and we ran a ball control offense just to try and eat up as much time on the clock as we could and keep our defense off the field. And I didn't get to throw the ball as much as I wanted to, but that was our best way of, I guess, winning because we didn't have a lot of speed on the outside. So Don was a little bit more of a ball control type of coach to try and keep the score close. And we had a pretty good year. We finished 6-5, and we were one game away from going to the Super Bowl, to the Rose Bowl. So we were very competitive, and it was a good start for us for a new regime.
And then during your senior year, you did make it to the Rose Bowl, and you beat Michigan.
Yeah, beat the mighty Wolverines, who were rated number 3 in the country at that time, and we were 17-point underdogs in that ball game. Nobody gave us a chance, but we had tremendous confidence in ourselves, and we went into that game and just let everything flow. And I ended up having a pretty good game myself and ended up being the MVP of the game. So It was one of the great days for me in my sports career, being able to come back to Los Angeles where I lived. Actually, it was in Pasadena, but right outside of Los Angeles, and be able to play in front of my friends and family and play in the Rose Bowl, a bowl game that I had always admired as a young kid growing up, watching it and going to the Rose Parade and all that as a young kid, now getting a chance to play in it as a college senior.
So you're the Rose Bowl MVP, which was the biggest bowl game at that time, and you don't get drafted in the NFL. I don't get it. I understand it's because you're a black quarterback, but were these teams not willing to give you any shot because of it?
Not really. I had the same problems coming out of college that I had coming out of high school. Everybody wanted to change me, and I just knew it was part of the time. It was, it was just a time where African Americans weren't looked highly upon as quarterbacks. There was a lot of stereotypes about us playing the position, and I got caught up in that some. But I wasn't going to let it deter me. I was going to go again where I could get the best opportunity. And just like I went to junior college, I decided to go to Canada because they were going to give me a chance to play quarterback. So even though I wasn't going to be able to fulfill my dream, which was my dream as a young kid to play in the NFL, I never lost sight of that, even though I had to go a different direction to do it.
But wasn't Vince Evans in the league at that time with the Bears and Doug Williams with Tampa?
No, they were both in the USFL at that time. I don't think there were any black quarterbacks in the league when I came back from Canada. And Doug was drafted by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but that was because John McKay had always had African-American quarterbacks at USC. He had Jimmy Jones and a couple other guys that had played quarterback for him at USC, so drafting an African-American quarterback for him wasn't anything different. But I'm sure that if John McKay wouldn't have drafted Doug Williams in the first round, he might have, who knows where he might have went in the draft. So, yes, those guys were in the league, but Vince wasn't playing very much. Doug was doing a pretty good job at Tampa, but then by the time I came into the league in '84, they were out of the league just because of problems they were having with their contracts getting re-signed, so they went to the USFL.
What would the NFL try to change you to from a quarterback? I look at you and I say, okay, you're a quarterback. I'm not a personnel guy, but I'm saying the guy's a quarterback, period. End of story.
Well, that's what I say too. But we've seen many African-American quarterbacks changed to different positions. And sometimes your athletic ability penalizes you as a quarterback because they want to put you in a position that's a more skilled position, whether it be wide receiver or defensive back. And I just never felt like I was that good enough an athlete to play another position like that. I was a good athlete for quarterback, but I wasn't a great enough athlete to make the transition to go to wide receiver or defensive back, which some other guys maybe were better athletes than I was that were able to make that transition.
What was it like playing for the Edmonton Eskimos?
I loved it. It was a great opportunity for me. It was a veteran football team. I didn't have to come in there and be a leader or anything. I could come up and just learn. I got a chance to develop my game. We won a lot. We won 5 championships while I was up there. So it was a great environment for playing football, even though you were in another country, you were learning another culture, you were a long ways from home in that. But because you were winning, because you were having fun doing something that you loved, playing football, it made it bearable, no question about it.
And Edmonton seemed to be more progressive because with the Edmonton Oilers, they had a black goalie in Grant Fuhr.
Yeah, they did, and I became friends with all those guys on the Oilers. Wayne Gretzky was there at the time, and Paul Coffey, and Kevin Lowe, and Yari Curry, and as you said, Grant Fuhr. They had a great hockey team, and at one point we won 5 straight championships in football, and then they won, I think, 4 out of 5 cups. So they kind of renamed Edmonton the City of Championships because between that 10-year period, there was 9 championships in that city. So it was a very good sports town, a very great fan base, and it was just a good time to be living in Edmonton, Alberta.
While you were enjoying your success in the Canadian Football League, did any NFL teams contact you and say, hey, we'd like to have you play quarterback for us?
Oh, yeah. I had plenty of teams looking at me as far as scouts up in our press box all the time, and I was always made aware of the teams that were going to be there, watching me that night, and I got a lot of exposure because when the NFL went on strike in 1983, I think it was, or 82, our games were televised in the U.S., so I got a lot of exposure that way as well. So you knew when you had a chance to play on U.S. television, you wanted to play even a little bit better. It was kind of a motivator for you. So it was just a matter of my contract getting to a point where I could get out of it, or it running out, and then was I going to decide to come back to the NFL or not? Because I really was enjoying playing in Canada, but again, my dream was always to play in the NFL, and I had accomplished so much in Canada over those first 5 years that there wasn't a whole lot left for me to do up there as far as winning, as far as winning individual awards or team awards. So that's when I started saying, hey, maybe it's time for me to go back down to the NFL if I can get the right opportunity and see exactly how good I was as a quarterback. Because I think the only way you can judge yourself is to play against the best. And there's no question the best were in the National Football League.
I see that Houston won the bidding war for you in '84. Who else wanted your services?
Well, it came down to Houston and the Seattle Seahawks, which is where I was living in the off season. And I went to school at the University of Washington, so it was a natural progression for me. You know, Chuck Knox was the coach at that time. They had a very good football team. They went to the AFC, I think, championship game and lost. But Dave Craig was their quarterback at the time, so the Seahawks were making a big push for me, and it kind of puzzled me that they even wanted me as their quarterback because they had a really good football team. But Houston was more of a draw for me, one, because it was a up-and-coming franchise. It was something that I could build with as opposed to going to Seattle, a team that was already good. I really liked the challenge of going somewhere and making a bad team good. And also my head coach, Hugh Campbell, from Canada, was named the head coach at Houston. So I'm going to a team now that has a coach that's familiar with me. I'm familiar with him. And I just thought maybe we could have some of the same success we had in Edmonton in Houston.
Did playing on the larger field in the CFL hinder your early days in the NFL?
I don't think so. I think the big thing was talent level. You know, we didn't have a great talent at Houston when I got there. Again, they were a 2-14 team that we were coming off of that season, and we just had to rebuild our personnel. We had a very young offensive line, some really good offensive linemen for the future. You know, Bruce Matthews was on that offensive line. Mike Munchak was on that line, both Hall of Famers. We also had Dean Steinkuhler, who was the number 1 overall pick in the draft. Excuse me, number 2 overall pick in the draft when I first came in. So we were building up front with young guys, and then later on we got more outside, talent as far as Ernest Gibbons and guys like that really made our passing game start to take off. So once we got the talent around me that we could utilize my strengths, which was throwing the football, then we started to really making some noise offensively.
Oh, yeah, you had some great running backs in Rozier. You had Haywood Jeffries at wide receiver. But the coach who really took advantage of you was Jerry Glanville when he took over.
Yeah, Jerry, he was a very energetic coach. He was known as the man in black or whatever he wanted to call himself. And we had some really hard-hitting defenses, and the Astrodome kind of became known as the House of Pain and that type of thing on the defensive side of the ball. So there was a lot of enthusiasm built into our football team when Jerry took over as coach, and we started to run more of the spread offense, more of the 4 wide receiver type thing called the red gun, and then later on we changed it to the run and shoot.
Was he an easy coach to get along with?
Beg your pardon?
Was Glanville an easy coach to get along with?
Well, he was and he wasn't. He was a very big personality guy. He liked a lot of attention, and we butted heads sometimes. I think just because as a quarterback I got a lot of attention as well, and I don't know if he always liked that, but I had respect for him because he was my head coach, and he called the shots, but there was a lot of things that he did as a coach that I didn't necessarily agree with sometimes.
Then Jack Pardee comes in there, and basically you're in the playoffs. The game I most remember is that 1992 playoff game against the Bills. What was that like?
Wasn't a very good day. It started out to be a very good day. We jumped out ahead, something that we wanted to do early to try and get the crowd out of the game and take the momentum away from the Bills, especially being on the road and being in Buffalo. And so were able to do that. We had a commanding lead at halftime, I think, with 28-3, and then we jumped ahead 35-3 in the third quarter, and then that's when the dam broke, and we gave them an opportunity to get back into the game with two quick scores. And then after an onside kick, they got the ball back again, and the momentum in the ball game just changed from there. And we just didn't put them away when we had them down, and we have nobody to blame but ourselves. And me being the quarterback of that football team, I put a lot of blame on me for not being able to make the plays down the stretch to make the game, ours. And that's something that I'll always look back on and say we let that one get away, because I really thought that team was good enough to make it to a Super Bowl that year.
And then you get traded to Minnesota. Your reaction to all that after an illustrious career in Houston?
I was a little bit surprised, but not after it being explained to me. I had gone to 6 straight Pro Bowls. We had just come off of a 12-4 season, and I was being traded mainly because the salary cap came into play, and our backup quarterback, Cody Carlson, had just been signed to a pretty good numbered deal the year before, and they couldn't keep us both because of the salaries. And they were looking at my age, being 38, and then the fact that he was a younger guy that they had been developing for the future, so they decided to make the change because they didn't know how long I was going to continue to play at that level at that age, and they thought Cody was ready to take over as a starter. So I understood where they were coming from, but I also knew how I felt as a player and where I was physically. And I told Floyd Reese, our general manager at that time, I said, I think you're making a mistake, but you've got to do what you feel is best for the organization. And I went ahead and accepted a trade to the Minnesota Vikings, which I thought was a team that could have been pretty good if we wouldn't have lost some guys on defense to free agency, because all they were really lacking was the offensive side of it. And so I went there, and we had a couple of playoff seasons, but never were able to really get over the hump there.
What was your favorite moment in professional football?
I think really the day that I actually signed my first contract, because I had to take such a long road to get there, And again, I told you my dream was to play in the NFL. That was all the way back to when I was a young kid, and no matter what I had to do along the way, whether it was going to high school and going to junior college and going to Canada and playing after my major college career was over, I finally got there at age 28 or 27 or something like that, and I think that was my most memorable day when I was able to sit down and actually sign that contract as the richest player in the NFL at that particular time, believe it or not. After all I had gone through, that's where I ended up, and that was one of the most memorable days for me, being able to sign that first NFL contract.
Now, if you were coming out of college today, I would assume you'd have a much easier time making it as a quarterback in the NFL. But I
would hope so.
What has been the impetus for all that? Your success?
Well, I think my success coupled with Doug Williams' success winning the Super Bowl in '88 and Randall Cunningham's success, we all played at about the same time, and we were 3 African-American quarterbacks playing at a very high level, one having won a Super Bowl, one having been an MVP of the league, and myself just having a very consistent career and playing at a very high level for over a long period of time. I think all of that helped that next generation of guys get more opportunities to be drafted as quarterbacks. So not only did I play a role in it, but those other 2 guys that I talked about did as well. And that's something I think we'll all be very proud of for a long time, that we were able to make a difference in people's minds in the NFL and opened up the gates for all these other young quarterbacks like the Donovan McNabbs and the Dante Culpeppers and the Michael Vicks and those guys to get an opportunity to play at a very high level and be drafted very high in the draft.
When you went in the Hall of Fame, did you expect it, or did it come as a surprise?
Well, I knew, compared to who was already in there, that I had a chance to make it in there one day. I wasn't really sure because it's never in your control or your power because other people are voting on you. But I knew I had a pretty good resume. I knew I didn't have a championship under my belt, but I also knew that there were other quarterbacks in the Hall of Fame that didn't have championships under their belt, and they were in there. So, again, I knew it was a possibility, but I definitely wasn't sure. And when I got the call in my first year as a first ballot guy, that surprised me a little bit, but I took it.
Who was your favorite receiver to throw to?
Probably Chris Carter, who finally made it to the Hall of Fame this year, and I got a chance to play with him 3 years in Minnesota, and he set an NFL record for most receptions the first year I was there with him. That got broke the second year by one reception. So over a 2-year period, he caught 244 balls from me. So we had a very good rapport early, even though we didn't know each other that well. But that was because we both practiced really hard, and we both gave each other a great picture in practice. So once we got to the game, it was just like second nature, and it's like we've been playing with each other for years.
Who gave you the most problems defensively?
I would say that maybe the Philadelphia Eagles did one year when I was with Houston. They had a very physical defense. Reggie White was there, Jerome Brown was there, Seth Joyner. They had a really, really physical defense, and they really got after our run and shoot pretty good. Really intimidated our receivers, really knocked them around. So they were one team that I had difficulty with in the one game we played against them. But in our division, Cleveland always gave us a lot of problems in the AFC Central just because we played them so much and we knew each other so well.
Buddy Ryan was your coach, defensive coach in Houston. Did his defense play with that intensity in practice that they did in games?
He tried to. It's kind of hard to get guys, in week 12, week 14 of the season to keep playing with that same type of intensity, especially in Houston, Texas, where it never gets cool until November. So you have to really curtail, how much energy you expend in practice so you're fresh and ready to play in the game. But there's no question that he's intense as far as the attention to detail and things like that. But the guys just definitely couldn't be as physical in practice because you're playing against your own guys. You don't want to beat up your own teammates.
In that comeback game, I remember him and Kevin Gilbreth bending each other's faces. I thought they were going to come to blows.
Well, Buddy took a swipe at him, but that was something that started off way back in training camp. And when Buddy took over as defensive coordinator, he wasn't a big proponent of our offense, and he felt like his defense, could dominate and stop our offense. So it became this them against us thing in training camp way back in the off season. That probably shouldn't have been, and probably should have been nipped in the bud by Jack Pardee at some point, just because he and Kevin Gilbreth really competed too hard in practice for us to be on the same team, and it finally came into a head that day when Kevin called a play and it was the ball was intercepted. That Cody Carlson was a quarterback at that time, and Buddy felt that we should have ran the football and ran the clock out at the end of the first half. But Kevin called a pass and it was picked off, and his defense had to go back out in the field. So he was pretty upset about that, and that's when they got into the argument, and that's when Buddy took a swipe at him.
Now, when you end up playing for the Seahawks, did you feel that your career had sort of come full circle?
No question about it, because that was, like I said, one of the places where I thought I was going to go coming out of Canada, and I'm glad I got a chance to at least play up there for a couple of years, even though, I was at age 41 at that time when I got there. But really enjoyed my couple of years there playing. I led the league in passing that year, my first year there, and was MVP of the Pro Bowl that year. So it was a fun year for me. And like I said, I got a chance to play in front of all those fans that I played in front of in college. And I really thought my career was going to be it. But, I got a call from the Kansas City Chiefs to come play for them. So I decided, hey, I can still play physically. So maybe there's an opportunity there. So I went to Kansas City.
One last question. Who was your favorite player growing up?
Wow. Too many to call. I was a big Rams fan because I grew up in L.A., and Roman Gabriel was one of my favorites as far as a quarterback, but I also loved Roger Staubach, and because I used to watch the Dallas Cowboys all the time because they were on TV, it seemed like every weekend, and I just loved the way he played the game. And believe it or not, O.J. Simpson was one of my favorite players as well when he was in college. I mean, what a great running back he was back at his USC days.